selfdefenseradio.net to check out all the other great shows. Hi, this is Matt from Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns, and you're listening to another fantastic show on the Self-Defense Radio Network. Visit selfdefenseradio.net to check out all the other great shows.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. We're recording this one on Monday, the 13th of April, 2020. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morse, and on tonight's show, we'll talk with Dr. Miguel Faria, author of America, Guns, and Freedom.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about companies stepping up to make masks and other protective gear to protect against COVID-19.
I'm Tracy Thronberg, and we'll hear about what happened when someone messed with a Texan.
I'm Gary Doherty, and in one of our DGUs, we talk about attackers in surgical masks and gloves. So, climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 538 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. Hey, and we're back. If it's Monday night, this must be the Polite Society podcast. Rob, man, you and I and Amanda have had a busy darn week. But the listeners don't know about some of that. What's been going on with you since the last time we were on the air?
Well, since a week ago, Paul, yeah, you and I haven't spoken to each other in at least a few minutes.
Exactly.
So, other than that, it's been a usual week. Bill Frady and I was on his Lock and Load radio program. I put another edition of Self-Defense Gun Stories out. I've got Tony Simon on deck to do our next recording. Carried every day, dry practice. In the age of quarantine, we get to be good at dry practice. And you and I, I'll let our readers in on our listeners in. You and I and Amanda and a lot of help from others have done so far, 45 short videos, 10-minute videos aimed at the new gun owners that are in quarantine rather than getting into training classes and going to the range, trying to get them over that hump so that they're ready when we finally get to go out again. John, how have you been?
Well, my big event was I actually left the house for the first time in about 10 days to go shopping for food, etc. I was a masked man. And since hardware stores are considered essential in North Carolina, I picked up a Pelican-like gun case, fairly cheap at Harbor Freight, had a coupon for it. We had a fairly quiet Easter, followed by a tremendous storm last night. Some places in western North Carolina got upwards of 6 to 8 inches of rain. And just across the border in South Carolina, they had an EF3 tornado. So it was an eventful evening. How about you, Gary? How are things out in Chicago?
Pretty good. You know, carrying every day. Haven't left the house until Saturday or Sunday. Sherry decided we were going to have ham for Thanksgiving, and there's a great restaurant.
Easter?
For Easter. Thank you, Rob. I should write these things down that I won't screw them up so bad, right?
Thought.
So I went over to the restaurant, and there was over 100 people in line for their Easter ham.
Holy smokes.
It's that good. So Sherry, I texted her. She said, "Come back and get me. I'll stand in line and you can drive." So I pulled the truck in line because it was just people, 6 feet apart down a street, and she just sat on the tailgate a little bit, stood a little bit, and we had the best ham you've ever tasted for Easter. And she also got us all masks, and I have that doesn't work with the green screen, but I have a Claude Werner Tactical Edition face mask. So we're all well protected, and like I said, still carrying in the house, pants on, gun on, like Rob. Tracy, what's happening? Been a while.
Not a blessed thing is happening over here. I haven't left the house since we recorded last week. I'm still working from home. Like John, here in Central Texas, we have had horrendous April showers. I got awoken early Sunday morning by my phone screeching because we had a tornado alert. I got a case and a half of American Eagle ammo delivered on Saturday. I have 2 cases of Fiocchi that shipped today. So,
do you think maybe you should just save money and order by the pallet?
It's thought.
Nobody will let me order that much. Because I would if I could. Well, that and I wouldn't have a place to store it. I would make the room, dude. I would so make the room. But anyway, Dana, what's going on with you?
Well, I've been stuck at home as well, working remotely. I did make a delivery on Saturday of some PPE to up to Romeo for the Postal Service Romeo office that my wife used to work at. And then also dropped off some supplies for another mask maker, PPE maker. And we had our Easter potluck social distancing style on Sundays. So, Amanda, what have you been up to?
Social distancing on Easter potluck. Somebody else had pictures of this gorgeous Easter dinner, and I was like, wow, I didn't take any pictures of my Gorton's fish sticks.
We got the ham and Shelly made a couple things, and her sister made a couple things, and we all met at her sister's house and traded bags and took them back to our houses.
Oh, that was neat. That works. So I have not been cooking because I have been spending more virtual time with Rob and Paul than a person really needs to spend.
Amen.
Sorry about that.
We'll just say. But we've been working on this great project, the Guns 101, that Rob stole my thunder. And you're going to want to check out some of the videos. They are amazing. And if you go to the Polite Society Podcast YouTube page, as long as you know that there was a YouTube page, and when you go there, there's a playlist that has Guns 101 on it. And right now there's in the 40s. And I think that there's enough lined up that we're going to have like 60 some videos.
Mm-hmm.
It's an amazing project. And we'll see where it takes us. So Paul, what else are you doing besides editing videos till
Oh my God. Well, Susan, let's do you first. You've been working obviously, but because you're essential. I gotta say to the listeners, I'm very concerned about my sweetheart because she's right out there in public. I know you've been keeping careful. You want to talk a little bit about that? We got some masks that you ordered us.
Yes, we did. Paul has 2 of the Claude Werner Tactical Professor masks, and I have 2 plain ones because I don't look good in tactical professor stuff. But I wear it at work, change my gloves often. I go through a box of 100 gloves per 8-hour shift, so wash my hands. If anybody has any hand lotion tips that would do because they're just raw from being washed so much, I'd appreciate it. Other than that, I'm working. Last week I worked 46 hours. This week I'm only scheduled to work 45.
Okay. Yeah, and as for me as a man, I when we recorded last week, I thought I was going out the next day. Yeah, psych. I've been off for a week. 2 of the plants that we pull a lot of freight for have shut down. And so I got a week off. I supposedly am supposed to be leaving Wednesday.
Oh,
That's
please.
Yeah. That's kind of up in the air a little bit. I don't have a specific load assignment yet, but we are hoping that very soon I get a loadout. And yeah, I have been spending. I try to be really positive on here. I really try to keep all my comments positive. However, I normally, for my job, spend my days in a very, very expensive chair that is designed specifically for truck drivers to spend multiple hours in the seat and driving down the road. This week, I have been spending 10 to 12 hours per day in the lowest cost office chair we could get off Amazon about a year ago. And it's not working so great. But this video series, it is really cool. I really do encourage you all to please check it out, to please what we're doing, and to go a little bit deeper into the video series itself. We talk to trainers about what they think brand new gun owners need to know. Every trainer talks about safe storage or gun safety in some manner. But then to each trainer that comes on with us, it is, what do you think new gun owners really need to get and that you can give in 10 minutes or less? And we've got 40, as I'm speaking right now, we've got some in the can that have not been uploaded, but we've got 42 or 43 that have been uploaded. And some of them are just, the Claude Werner ones were really, really, really cool. Rob Pincus is getting a ton of views on the ones he did. We've got all kinds of great trainers, and there's a few with just Amanda and Rob and me. But I just really encourage you, take a look at them, and more importantly, show them, if you know of somebody who's asking questions about firearms, or maybe they're thinking about getting a firearm, point them towards this playlist. And they can find something from somebody that answers their questions and that they will connect with. And I think it's been time well spent on our part. So,
Amen.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to talk a little bit about the Self-Defense Radio Network. For those of you watching live on Facebook, you can see the website up right now at sdrn.us. There are right now a dozen, and I know I say this often, but I promise there are more shows coming. We've got a dozen shows up right now. We, of course, the Polite Society podcast are there, as well as Modern Self-Protection, Survival and Basic Badassery, and Firearms Chat with Dr. Bill Chackus is up there. You can subscribe to any of the shows just by clicking on their link, or if you want to just listen off your web browser, you can do that right off the website. We are going to step aside to break. When we come back, we're going to get into our interview segment, and we'll get there right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership, and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
Hey, and welcome back to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our interview segment, and heads up, Amanda, I'm going to throw to you in about 2 seconds. Our guest is Dr. I lost myself here just a second. Our guest is Michael Faria. He's the author, and
I'll do it.
Amanda, rescue me.
I'll do it. I will rescue you.
Stop, Paul.
America.
Did you unmute our guest?
I don't know. Yeah, can we actually hear the guest? America Guns and Freedom, and his name is Miguel Faria, and he was from Cuba. He came to the United States. He's based out of Georgia, and he is going to tell us something that we have always sort of known, which is the CDC and the medical industry really is out to get us as Second Amendment people. And so he sees it, knows it, and wrote a book about it. Miguel, are you there?
I'm here.
Hey, thanks for
Can you hear
joining
me?
us. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you, and I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, well, great. So, so why don't you tell folks a little bit about your book? Because the way we do the format of this show is that you talk a little bit, and then the instructors, co-hosts, they all start to ask questions, and we'll kind of go back and forth from there. So tell them, what caused you to write this book? What caused you to start to tell people what you found out from the CDC and the medical community and the Second Amendment?
Well, I was asked by the White House at the time of Bush Jr. as president to serve in a committee to oversee some of the grants that were approved for gun and violence research. And of course, I was very well known in the medical establishment because I've been one of those, in fact, the only editor who fought the medical establishment so that we could have opposing views on the issue of guns. For example, when I was editor of the Medical Association of Georgia, all the articles that were published, whether they came from the AMA or from any medical society or the public health establishment, they all concluded the easy gun availability results in crime and violence, and the use of firearms should be restricted, that this was a health issue. And when I started doing research on the subject, I found that really the information they were getting and they were promulgating was biased and based on politicized research. In fact, I call it junk science and pseudoscience, and when I got the medal for it. So I was amazed that, that I was asked to go to the CDC, basically the belly of the beast that I've been criticizing now for years, to serve in the Grant Review Committee. And from there, I decided that, my God, this is a good time to really write this down and expose the pseudoscience that was involved in gun research. And of course, I have already testified at the Congressional Committee as far as the fact that the research that was conducted by the CDC and the other public health establishments were biased and were politicized. They had preordained research that always led to the same conclusion, that guns were bad and they should be restricted from the general population. So you can imagine the dismay of many people there at the CDC when I went over there to supervise and participate in the Grant Review Committee. So the book began on that basis, but as I did more and research about, for example, gun control in other countries, and many other aspects of the Second Amendment, it evolved the book. And so the book is more than just about public health and gun control. It's about various aspects of the Second Amendment, and of course, dealing with the medical establishment, the fact that they were really not using science at all, but propaganda. And of course, that led to because of our testimony, there were 4 of us, it led to the Baekje Amendment that I know you're familiar with. that was in place until a couple of years ago when finally money was again funded for gun and violence research. I'm happy to report. So that now close to $50 million is spent by the CDC for gun and violence research. But for many years, that was really restricted. And it was not really gun research that was banned. It was the propaganda that came out masquerading as scientific research. And so
let me ask a question. When you said that there's like a preordained decision that this research was going to do, they already gave them the summary before they actually started the hypothesis of whatever they were researching. So who's behind that? Where is America's anti-guns within the medical community? Kind of, what's your thought?
Well, see, it's very hard to explain to people to understand this. It's not that this, well, actually, there have been programs. In fact, that is exposed in my book. Dr. Tim Willett and I show how the CDC was using taxpayers' money to promulgate propaganda. And we have this very well documented in the book. Mm-hmm. But I think that is ingrained, is indoctrination that is taking place by the AMA and the medical journals by the fact that only articles that are anti-gun are published and only research that leads to the same preordained conclusions that firearms are harmful and that they're a public health issue and that guns are like viruses that need to be eradicated from the general population. If you don't end with those conclusions, and of course asking for more money for research, which is amazing. You know, they criticize the pharmaceutical industry and other industries when private research is conducted and somebody's put money into it. Oh, obviously the research is biased because this person was paid by such and such pharmaceutical company. But when they say we need more money for this research, they don't understand that they are promoting money for themselves. I mean, taxpayers' money for research that is already biased, and always conclude with those two conclusions, that guns are bad and they should be restricted from the general population, and second, that more money is needed. It is amazing. It's ingrained in the establishment, it permeates the whole establishment, so it's not one person that has done this. If you don't want to be ostracized, if you don't want to be ridiculed in the public health establishment and the medical establishment, you better toe the line or you will be possibly destroyed for ridicule and ostracism from your professional colleagues.
Okay, so it sort of sounds like it's the Salem witch hunts, because you saw what I saw, right? If you didn't see what I saw, that kind of a thing, that makes it make a little more sense in my head as to how do they always come to the same conclusion when we know that conclusion is incorrect. So Miguel, well, here's what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go around to the different co-hosts and see what questions they've got, because I think this is a really interesting topic and a really interesting subject. So Rob, you want to start out?
Right. To step away from your book for a minute, I want to use or take advantage of your perspective. You've seen things about the culture here in the U.S. that I don't see because I've grown up with it. You transitioned into our culture. What do you think about the use now of the Wuhan flu epidemic to restrict our rights, particularly our Second Amendment rights?
Well, I believe, in Cuba, we had a revolution that overthrew the order of things, and we ended up with communism over there. What I see here is by evolution, we're leading to the same type of regime, a socialistic regime, were really authoritarianism. And now, all of a sudden, with the coronavirus, they are making a big jump. I mean, they are trying to overthrow President Trump. I think that the coronavirus has been greatly exaggerated. Yes, there is an epidemic, which is now called a pandemic, and thousands of people have died. But this has happened year after year with the flu. And if you go back to the statistics, the swine flu epidemic, you will see that thousands of people died, and yet we didn't go through this panic that is orchestrated by people that want to overthrow our fundamental order. And if they can bypass the Constitution, if they can bypass the Second Amendment, again, we go back to public health. That's what they were trying to do with the restriction of firearms, using or saying that this is a public health issue and ignoring the Constitution. And this is what's happening with this coronavirus. I think it has backfired because, just this in March, at least 2.5 million firearms were sold. So I think that the plan has misfired. But nevertheless, I do believe that there is an orchestration of this panic conducted to change the order of things and to overthrow Donald Trump. He's going against the deepest state in this country, and the coronavirus has been exaggerated greatly. And it's amazing that, the United States is the leader, and the world just follows us in many ways, whether it is Hollywood and movies, the popular culture. Now, this pandemic, the world is looking at us. And yes, I do believe that I can see things that other people do not see because I have lived under a totalitarian regime, and I've seen how this country has changed from the time that my father and I reached the United States. And it's very sad that, because I assume a lot of this is because the public education system has been so really not doing its job. Kids are not informed. How can you imagine that the new generation, millennials and Generation Z, prefer socialism to capitalism? They do not know that 100 million people were killed by their own governments in the 20th century, by governments, all of which were socialist. From Nazi Germany to Soviet Russia to Mao Zedong's China, they have all been collectivist socialist regimes. And it is sad that the public education has failed to instruct our children so they can see the reality that this country has been a beacon of freedom. And that, in fact, that is the reason I call my book America, Guns, and Freedom.
Okay, well, Miguel, we need to take a quick break. We need to pull away for a minute, but we will come back. And to wrap kind of one of your points about the socialism part is that our youth says, well, social is a good thing, isn't it? So it's got to be good because that word's in there. So, but we'll be back right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off.
Okay, and we are back. You're listening to the Polite Society podcast, and our guest in this segment is Dr. Miguel Faria, the author of the book America, Guns, and Freedom. So, Miguel, thank you so much for joining us. This is so interesting. And I know that John's got a question because he's been waiting so patiently.
Let me ask you, in one of your books, you speak about how your parents opposed Batista, but then had to flee Cuba because they ran afoul of Castro and the communists. How has this influenced your ideas about the Second Amendment and the right to keep and bear arms?
Oh, wow. There you really asked me a loaded question. Yeah. See, I come from a revolutionary family. My parents were involved in what was called the Student Revolutionary Directorate, that it was an underground organization to overthrow Batista. But this organization was run by communist students and young professionals. And the interesting thing is that the media did not cover them. I had to admit, Fidel Castro is a very charismatic leader, and his organization prevailed rather than the Student Revolutionary Directorate. And when they had the revolution have triumphed, there was a kind of a fight of words between Paure Chomon, who was the leader of our group, Fidel Castro. But Fidel Castro outmaneuvered him, and in speech he gave, he said, when Paure wanted us to keep our firearms, and Fidel Castro, he went, gave this speech and said, "Armas para qué? Para luchar contra el pueblo," which means guns for what? The people have already decided what they are. You going to fight the people? And it was basically, our group was literally and figuratively disarmed. And from then on, it was his group that prevailed. And one of the first things that Fidel Castro did, because he is an evil genius, Fulgencio Batista, he had all supposedly he was such a terror dictator. And, at the last year of his life in Cuba, he was fierce. But he was otherwise a very enlightened despot, if you want to call him. And he allowed people to have firearms. But they have to be registered in the local town halls of each city. So when Fidel Castro took over, he sent his militia to go through the registries and find out who had guns, and people were disarmed. Even my father went to our house and took our firearms. My father pitched a fit about this, and eventually he was returned one of the firearms, but they used registration, lease to confiscation. There was no banning. You went directly from registration to confiscation, and the enemies of the, quote, the revolution were disarmed, so there was no opposition. Even with that, many peasants were led by some of my father's and by my parents' friends who have been in the Student Revolutionary Directorate, and they went to the Escambray Mountains, where they fought an incredible war that lasted almost 6 years. That was not reported by media. It was there were more lives lost in that war, in the Escambray Wars, than in overthrowing Batista, but way by far. Even Raul Castro admitted that they sustained thousands of losses fighting just hundreds of peasants that were poorly armed And after the Bay of Pigs, they no longer could be reinforced by the CIA, and eventually these farmers lost their land and their lives. Most of them were annihilated in the hills, and if they were captured alive, the few that were captured alive were shot in the fighting squads. And this was something that the media, American media, did not cover. The Cuban media would not be allowed to cover it. By that time, we had censorship. So I know what a totalitarian state can do as far as disarming the people, because we lived it. And
did we lose you?
So many years.
Oh, there we go. I'm sorry. You were breaking up there, Miguel. So are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, so I know what it means to lose your firearms because tyranny follows. Tyranny follows. And once the power is consolidated by the state and the people are disarmed, they can do whatever they want with you. And that, I am afraid that could happen here if the American people do not wake up. And I think that, like I say, the public education system is not teaching kids about the importance of history and freedom.
Okay, and as you said, so it was registration led directly to confiscation. That, I think, is probably one of the most important things that you're sharing with us. Dana, were you going to ask a question? Oh, okay. So somebody else got a question for him, because I mean, I think that this is, if you were in a position to tell the next generation one thing about where we stand this year in 2020 and the COVID virus and the fact that they're locking down gun shops and closing ranges and rationing toilet paper and limiting food, what advice would you give? What would you say, given the experiences that you've had, for what we should be looking for or doing in the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days?
I think we need to remain informed and vigilant, and under no circumstances lawful citizens should allow themselves to be disarmed, and we need to draw the line of how much we will tolerate. And this is important. It's more of a strategic advice rather than tactical, and that is, we need to start supplementing the kids' education at home, because otherwise they are only hearing one side, the propaganda side, the anti-gun side, just like happened in Cuba. After there was no homeschooling in Cuba, there was no private schools tolerated, there were no parochial schools, it was all government schools, so that the kids were indoctrinated. And I tell you, it's important. I think my book is very helpful. And I think that I hope the people listening here will call their public libraries, that they carry the book, so that the kids can hear a different perspective.
Well, let's tell them where they can just buy the book. Let's just go for that, so they can get the book at the library if they want to. America, Guns and Freedom, or they can go to Amazon. And on Amazon, they have a Kindle version. They've got a hardcover version of America, Guns and Freedom by Dr. Miguel Faria. And he's not just a doctor. He's a neurosurgeon who worked with the CDC. So he's got some stuff going on here. So the one question we've got is, how come you don't have it in what's the word? The voice ones, the recorded
audiobook
ones? That would be the word, audiobook. How come you don't have this in audiobook?
Well, that's something to think about. But we do. There's a Kindle edition. Okay. But that's something we need to think about.
You'll have to think about that, because as Paul is, the truck
I'm a
drivers in
lover of
America
books.
want to
I'm
know
not
about
a-
this.
Well, perhaps it's because I'm a lover of books, and I love to hold the book in my hands and turn the pages and so forth. Old-fashioned, I guess.
Yeah, it's not the same with the Kindle, and it's not the same with the audiobook, but we get it. So thank you so much for joining us on the Polite Society podcast. Now, his name is Miguel Faria, and the book is America, Guns, and Freedom. So check it out. Go to the library, go to Amazon, go to the bookstore, and pick it up. So thank you very much for joining us. We're going to head off to the news right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by Concealment Solutions. Jason Christensen makes the most comfortable inside the waistband holster on the market, bar none. The Black Mamba. Some of the other products offered are the Sidewinder outside the waistband holster and Python gun belts. Every product that Concealment Solutions makes has unsurpassed craftsmanship that shows in the fit and finish of the product. Visit concealmentsolutions.com to view all of the products available, and you can get 10% off your order when you enter the promo code POLITICS in the promo code box at checkout. That's concealmentsolutions.com.
Hey, and welcome back to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. This is our news segment, and as we are continuing to do, we're not doing pre-written news. We're just kind of doing free-form news. I'm going to start us off with that we do actually have Second Amendment news, not just COVID-19 news. We have Northam over there in Virginia. He actually did a good job at taking a swipe at the Second Amendment. Looks like one gun per month is back. Red flag laws are now in effect, and state preemption is gone. Again, and I'm going to steal Rob's tagline here: elections have consequences. And I'm talking. Anybody else want to jump in about this?
You did such a good job.
Well, the universal background check also was signed into law, which we've seen people affected during this COVID crisis because they couldn't even get a background check done in places. So what good does you can't help anyone then?
Yeah.
Now, I will say that most of these bills were actually passed a month or two ago, and he was just now getting around to signing them.
Yeah, but John, wasn't the plan was they were going to get killed in the Senate to push them off because they were worried about lawsuits with a conservative Supreme Court? Isn't that
what got pushed off actually was his assault weapon ban. But I think he was going to get at least a handful of, he was bought and sold by Bloomberg, along with his attorney general, who was bought and sold by Bloomberg. And the Virginia governors are always lame ducks from the moment they get elected because they're a one-term governor.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, that's the law.
I guess I've never paid attention to that. Huh. Interesting. So, I want to ask you guys if you know have you heard about the bill? I've got to find the bill number where they're trying to put firearms under the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Have you guys heard this?
I have. I read something about that this morning in AmmoLand.
Yeah, the Defense of Firearms Protection Act is the Defective Firearms Protection Act. I'm sorry. The Defective Firearms Protection Act is what they're trying to do. It's a 79-word bill. It's called H.R. 6110. And what they're trying to do is they're trying, under the guise of saying that, well, if a gun is broken, it needs to be recalled. And there is that other one, the I had it written on my other notes.
PLCAA.
Yeah, that one. PLCAA. The protection of lawful commerce. Whatever that means.
Protection for the Lawful Commerce in Arms Act.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. I
It's
got
okay.
the pieces of it. So that has kept guns out from under the control of the Consumer Product Safety Commission. Well, this bill would put it back under the Consumer Product Safety Commission, and then that's the same one who says you can't have this toy because the eyes will pop out and you could choke on it, and you can't have this thing because you may trip over it, and you can't have this because this may break or that.
And how have they not banned Legos?
I don't know, because those will poke the bottom of your feet.
By the way, the fact that semi-automatics eject brass, and that could be a choke hazard if a child gets it. Therefore, only the law enforcement can have semi-automatic firearms.
They can even go so far as to say, well, guns could kill you, and so thus you just inherently. So the Consumer Product Safety Commission, you don't want them to have control of the firearms. You want to keep it under the PLCAA. And so just pay attention to that, because that is, but it's House Resolution 6110. And I don't know where it's going, but I sure don't like it.
Amanda, here's what bothers me.
What?
The Democrats will prepare all these garbage bills and then attach them to emergency funding. When will the Republicans do the same?
Right.
Well, I'll tell you, Congressman Thomas Massey has said, if you've got an idea for a bill, you need to contact him and he will start putting pro-Second Amendment bills out. He says right now, he's kind of like he's playing defensive tennis, and they keep throwing things at him and he's whacking them back. But we're not serving at all. We're only doing the returns.
That's my point.
And that's his point. And he says, give him ideas, and he will foot the bills.
Amanda, I'm not swallowing it that it's a lack of knowledge. JPFO has a long list of model legislation that they've had for years.
Right.
So you're telling me Massey could never find that. It's one guy in Congress that
I'm not telling you that, but I am telling you that he is willing to listen to you.
Awesome.
That he's willing to work with you, and that people need to know that he actually freaking exists.
Great.
Because until he pushed back to the president just recently, there's so many pro-gun people who said, wow, who is he? That's really cool. And it was like, you don't know who this congressman from Kentucky is?
I know him and I love him, and that's not the question I asked. I would look at Mitch McConnell, since the Senate is controlled by Republicans. Where are all their top drawer bills for all the things conservatives want, including
ask them.
gun
I don't
owners?
know. But
thank you.
Let me tell you,
that's my point.
Yeah, it's not good.
Well, and Mitch McConnell, he had 2 years when the House was strongly controlled by Republicans, and he had the Senate, and the presidency was controlled by Trump. And where was the bottleneck? It wasn't in the House.
Up his nose. They didn't do anything.
The excuse he kept making is, I don't have 60 votes. And I kept saying, and you'll never get them unless you make Democrats act like Democrats and Republicans act like Republicans.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm being divisive again. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Say something else. we may get another email or two.
Yeah, we'll live with it. Where do you want to go next?
I want to go to Michigan.
You want to go to Michigan?
Why?
What the heck is going on with your governor there, Dana?
Thank you.
Oh,
she's going to be the vice president.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, wow. The vice presidential nominee.
Thank you. Good point.
Yes. Everything she's done has been political, and she's
reason.
aiming to get on the ticket as the Democratic vice presidential nominee, and she's just wreaking havoc with people's lives here.
Right. She wants to be the second in command to the groper in chief.
And
now that wasn't very. By the way, Paul, I think your governor, might well deserve a nomination to executive office.
To be a rock star. Yeah.
You know, she's there's a lot of people on social media. Fortunately, I don't believe 2/3 of those people vote. But there's a lot of people on social media that are just up in arms. But you know what? South Dakota is not New York City. And everybody that is clamoring and screaming for the heavy, heavy lockdowns, like some places, like Michigan, like Kentucky, she's basically said, you know, that's not going to work here. And
you guys are already socially distant.
Yes.
You guys are practicing social distancing before it was cool.
Exactly. But Rob, that is true about South Dakota. But have you heard of a state called Wyoming?
Oh, okay.
Oh.
So there are people for people who really don't like people. But her attitude of go be adults, don't make me correct you, don't embarrass me, march on. Good advice.
I'm not your mother. Yes.
Right. We don't need to
Novel
arrest
concept,
surfers.
right? Yeah.
Say again, Tracy.
Novel concept, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And amazingly as it seems, that the country that seems like it's doing it best right now is Sweden.
Mm-hmm.
Good old socialist Sweden.
And we got a comment from Dr. Adine on social media. John says, John Cornyn gave the same excuse. They need to force the vote.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We agree.
Yeah.
So John Richardson, why is Sweden doing it well? What's their trick?
Their trick is they think people are responsible. They're thinking that we're not going to mandate quarantines. People are socially distancing on their own. They believe their population are adults.
I did see one thing that frightens me for this country. As we learn more about this disease, one of the key comorbidity factors, in fact, the chief one, which surprised me. I thought, obviously, if you're in your extreme old age is an issue. So is obesity. And that frightens me for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with my lockdown, I'm telling you, it's me and the ho-hos. It's not been good.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's hard. I get it.
You know, as somebody who normally travels 3,000 to 3,500, 3,600 miles a week, 4,000 sometimes, this has just been, I don't get me wrong, I have absolutely loved seeing my sweetheart Susan every day. I have absolutely loved spending time with Amanda and Rob doing what we've been doing. But I've got this itch, and it is just getting worse every day. I need to go. And I really hope things get back to normal, because the reason I'm not going, it's not because I don't want to go. It's because there's nothing going.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. That I did notice that when I went out on Saturday, traffic even in a town was way down.
Yeah, let me.
John, you should see. So there's traffic cams available, live cams on the highways here. Take a peek sometime, at 7, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. in Chicago. Going, oh my! Paul said it a couple shows ago. It's a ghost town. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So now is the time if you want that B-roll for apocalyptic movies that show that everybody's gone.
Yeah, right.
Go get it. You
Go
get
get
it
your
for
footage
free.
now, right?
Well,
Yeah.
didn't you hear about people doing another cannonball run and they just beat the record again? Because there was nobody on the road.
Nobody on the roads.
I
Yes.
didn't read that.
Yeah, they
From-
average, what was it, 108 miles an hour from New York to L.A.?
Right on.
Some minutes.
Yeah.
That's a flight. That's a flight plan.
Yeah, it is. It is. There are some aircraft that couldn't do that.
Right.
When you had to stop to refuel. But, wow. This is not good. That's not gun related at all. But I wonder if it was a great 70s movie, but I wonder if that's not just a little bit asinine to be doing when we're all supposed to be socially distancing and
we're supposed to be grown-ups.
Yeah.
The great news is, Paul, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of Amanda. I thought we did a grown-up thing that people who were in quarantine might need some help if they just got a gun. They wanted to be responsible, and they don't even know where to look. Okay, YouTube will give you some advice. It may not be good advice. We wanted to make sure they at least had some quality instruction of where to start. Give them a roadmap. I like what we did. I've heard mixed reports about rates of crime in certain cities where, we changed sentencing guidelines. We released people because we didn't want them in jail where they could sue us if they died of the coronavirus. And now crime rates went up. On the other hand, other cities, it's hard to hang out with your druggy friends because the streets are relatively empty. So it's been a mixed bag. I don't know what to make of it yet.
I know it's not working in Chicago.
No, it's not. You win that.
Yeah, but you made Tracy really upset. What do you have to say, Tracy?
Oh, you know what? Don't break the law. Don't go to jail. It's as easy as that.
I get that part.
I am not a bleeding heart. We have to go free the prisoners because we don't want them to get COVID-19. Too bad. Don't break the law. Period.
Tracy, I get it, but you understand the plaintiff's defendant or the plaintiff's lawyer will claim you didn't provide adequate care of my client, and therefore you owe his family from now till that's what was going to be claimed.
They just won the lottery. Yep.
Yeah. They became a lottery ticket.
All right. Well, I think we're certainly up on our break here. So I think what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and jump to break. And when we come back, you get to hear my beautiful wife, Susan. We've got a couple of DGUs to talk about, and we'll get to those right after this.
Firearm Safety Institute is one of Northwest Illinois' premier firearm training companies. They provide superior firearm training to all levels of shooters. Gary Doherty has been a trainer and concealed weapons permit holder for many years. While living in Nevada, he carried legally and has the experience to train you to do the same. Firearms Safety Institute offers a wide range of courses designed to meet the personal needs of both seasoned shooters and those that are new to the world of firearms. If you are looking to apply for the Illinois Concealed Carry License, Firearm Safety Institute can provide you with the professional training that meets the state's requirements. Gary accommodates classes of all sizes and can provide individualized instruction if that is your personal preference. He's happy to work with you and your friends to arrange private classes and will come to your location and work around your schedule. If you would like to get your Illinois CCW or increase your firearm knowledge or skills, go to firearmsafetyinstitute.com to start the conversation. Mention the Polite Society podcast and receive a 10% discount on your training. Remember, that's firearmsafetyinstitute.com. Get your Illinois CCW today.
Your virtual training.
Yes, your virtual training, Gary says.
Hey, Gary, tell me about that. Is that just, you Skype at each other and keep saying muzzle and finger and...
Yeah. I mean, I've only talked with a few friends about basic carrying at home stuff because, we've been talking about it for years, but the carrying at home concept, locally, the break-ins have increased.
Wow.
Very local. So it's on the top of people's mind. So I've been talking about, don't think you're okay with a gun in the drawer. Put the damn thing on every day, just like if you were going out, because you never know. Lock this. Here's the thing. A couple of people went, "Oh, good idea. Lock the screen doors or the storm door because it's going to make a lot of noise." Them trying to knock that open before they get to the main door. If they're coming, they're coming. But
layered defense.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's an added layer of defense.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you lock it?
It's another 10 seconds of warning. Take it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so, like I said, a couple people went, "Oh, yeah, that's a good idea," So, but again, put the thing on, put your pants on, put your gun in your holster, and I tell this to every new student: start carrying around the house now before they get their permit, because that's 3 to 6 months before they see it from the state. Start carrying around the house now, so you get comfortable with it, because it's like changing anything. It's something you need to get used to. And then now I know instantly that I forgot to put it on for which I haven't. Right. You just notice, hey, I didn't. Oh yeah, So
I like it. I'm sorry to interrupt Paul. I interrupted your.
That's all right.
With a private conversation. I apologize.
Before we get to the disclaimer and get into DGUs, and I know Susan's ready to go, but I want to add one thing. If you think you are safe in your house and you don't need to carry while you are in your house, I will flat guarantee you, I don't care who you are, I don't care where you live, with the possible exception of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, I can get into your house within 30 seconds.
Yeah. Murphy's coming. Whatever you think you got.
And if you want to know how I'll do it, I may have never met you, I may have never seen your house. PM me on Facebook. I'll tell you how I'll get in there. I'm not going to put it on the air because I don't want just anybody to know. But I can get in any house, any residential house in the United States inside of 30 seconds.
Right.
But anyway, let me go over to show notes so I can say that these discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The defensive gun use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Susan,
but they should be.
They should be. They certainly should be. Susan, you have been sitting there so patiently, so quietly. I've been hearing you taking care of dogs while I've been working in here and keeping them quiet, and thank you for that. But now it is time to go off to Texas.
Does that mean I have to quit watching the snow?
Yeah, well, just for a few minutes.
Okay. As Tracy always says, my door is locked for your protection. Keeping it locked is good for protecting the home's occupants as well. A 73-year-old man was awakened at 12:45 a.m. by loud banging noises outside his home. They were coming from his back patio. He went to check and saw a 19-year-old man on the porch. The younger thug started attacking the man, which means he left the safety of his home. He pushed him back into the home and hit him with a blunt object. The unwelcome guest then put the homeowner into a chokehold, causing him to lose consciousness. The man's fiancée reported that she woke up during the fight and pleaded with the attacker to stop. He ignored her. She got a handgun from the bedroom and fired a warning shot out at the patio door, but the attack continued. Fearing for her own safety and the fact that her fiancé was now unconscious, she fired one more time. This time, her aim was at the attacker's head, and she hit her target. The homeowner called 911 once he regained consciousness. The attacker was transported to Hill Country Memorial Hospital and later University Hospital in San Antonio, where he died. The sheriff's office is investigating, and yes, Rob, they believe drug use was involved.
You think?
Yeah, no kidding.
Tracy, talk to me about warning shots in Texas.
Funny you mentioned that, Rob, because that's what I was typing into show notes is we don't give warning shots. You either need your gun or you don't need your gun. And if you need your gun, you better be sure you need your gun, and you need to be sure of your target and hit it. We don't give warning shots. Many years ago, I had to give a firearms safety class to a young man who was living in Burnett County, which is about an hour from me. And then I had to write a letter to the judge saying that, he had had a 4-hour class in gun safety and this, that, and the other. And it was at that time that, I told him, I said, dude, good luck with getting a carry permit ever in the state of Texas for doing something stupid like that. And the guy had given a warning shot because someone was trying to break into his shed in the backyard. Yeah. You either need your gun or you don't, but we don't give warning shots.
It's either an immediate lethal threat, in which case the gun is the tool because it is a lethal weapon, or it's not. And if it's not, man, it's not even good for sending sound signals.
Nope.
It's the wrong tool. I would like to ask, I think I know the laws in Texas. When was our defender justified in using lethal force? Not when the guy's outside on the porch.
It could have been when the guy was outside in a chokehold, or did the guy or did the homeowner go into the chokehold inside the house? I believe this happened in Fredericksburg, actually, which is about an hour west of here.
That is correct.
And I do also believe that drugs, well, here, yeah, right. It says that drugs were involved, but bad guy, elderly folks, chokehold, at night, disparity of force, nighttime, no other, way. Yeah, I'm going to argue that she was absolutely justified.
The fact that her fiance could no longer defend himself meant it was a huge imbalance in the use of force, and therefore lethal force was justified in his defense.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I say this a lot, and I'm going to repeat it for this story. Nobody I know says they don't pay enough in taxes. You pay your taxes. This is when you spend the money. Bunker in, call the cops. Funny noise outside my house.
Oh, I'm absolutely agreeing with Gary on this one. Don't go see what the problem or the noise is.
No. Right.
You're inside your house.
Yeah.
Stay there.
Stay in the bedroom. Stay with the gun. Get on the phone.
Yeah, even in your house, don't do a clearing drill. Don't try to figure it out.
Have a plan where you are going to go when you hear your alarm going off, you hear the dogs barking, whatever. And that plan should involve getting your cell phone and your gun and your flashlight and getting to the other side of the bed, between the bed and the wall or whatever. Do not go looking for what the noise or the problem is.
So I want a show of hands. How many of us here? Okay, I'm going to call us experts. Now, that's an insult to real experts the world around, but we've done force on force. We've done building clearance. I never got through that without getting shot. Anybody that much better than me that you didn't pick up some round somewhere, somehow?
Rob, I would say even if you did it successfully multiple times, don't do it.
Murphy.
In practice, sure. Wow. I can't think of a crisis situation where you would have to clear your own house alone. You spend the money, call the cops.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And to answer your question,
I'll just say that it is a roll of the dice, man. And why roll? You could lose.
Yeah.
Right.
And to answer your question, Rob, I was killed by Marty Hayes. So
I believe. Yep. I'm right there with you.
All right. Susan, let's go ahead, and we've got one up in Gary's neck of the woods.
Video doorbells are getting more common. So are people wearing masks and gloves. And Gary, you were right. This was a home invasion. 2 men walk up to a home wearing surgical masks and gloves. The 38-year-old man was from Chattanooga, and the 58-year-old criminal was from Buffalo Grove. The older man tried the doorknob and then bangs on the door. He then sees the Ring doorbell, warns the other man not to look at it, and then rings the bell. The video from the doorbell shows the 2 men entering the home. They can be heard shouting out a greeting. Then all mayhem breaks loose. Screams can be heard from inside. Seconds later, the male homeowner and the younger intruder are seen flying out the front door. The homeowner puts the smack down on the hoodlum, who is seen running from the scene seconds later. The homeowner rushes back to the house. He got his wife's weapon, while the other suspect held his wife and children at gunpoint. The two men fought, and at some point, the bad guy was disarmed. He was also shot and killed. The late Illinois resident had seen $200,000 in the home about 2 decades ago. For some strange reason, he thought that money might still be there. The homeowner had landscapers working at the house and are seen and heard in the video. He opened the door thinking the two would-be robbers were his landscapers. The Cook County Medical Examiner's Office ruled this a homicide, and the surviving criminal was being held in the county lockup without bail, facing murder charges.
Do I have to say it again? Pogo?
Amen.
Pants on, gun on, every day, all the time. You never know when it's coming. Rob?
These two guys came to this domestic robbery bringing a sack that had nylon cable ties and a blowtorch.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to torture this guy's family until he said where the money was, even if it wasn't there. And the fact, now here's the nightmare decision. You're running away from your family being held at gunpoint to try and get your gun. You never want to be in that position. You had to fight your way through one of the robbers to get your gun. Our victor here was lucky. Amanda, am I wrong?
No, I don't think you're wrong at all. The interesting part to this whole thing was that they ruled it a homicide. And the thing you'd never hear, you hardly ever hear, is that the person who was charged in the homicide was the second criminal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pick your friends and pick who you hang with and what you do. So in this case, it was very justified and it was very correct, but it was very interesting.
Well,
Dana? Oh, I'm sorry. John.
Well, the one thing I caught in this story was it didn't sound like the front door was locked.
Right.
They just kind of walked in.
Oh, they announced that they were police, by the way.
Ah.
Well, and Susan, I'm going to bring Susan in here because we had a discussion. Was it? Can't remember if it was yesterday or this morning or when it was. But Susan, Kevin Sona posted on Facebook, and there was in the comments there was a linked story in Florida where help me out here, Susan. I know Masada, you wrote about it, but
Coker.
Keep going.
God, I'm trying to remember.
Me too.
Don't you hate that?
To me.
Yes. That would be right up there with where he said, "Hey, you're going to do this interview in 5, 4, 3."
Right?
Bingo. Yeah.
Welcome to my life.
Yeah. It was in Florida. They are friends of Kevin Sona's. The husband was attacked in the middle of the night, and the wife came up. They didn't have their gun. He went running down the hallway. The guy beat him, pistol whipped him. The wife came running down the hallway, and the husband screaming, "Get a gun, get a gun." So she ran back to the bedroom.
Coker.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've met him.
Yeah.
Went running back down there. The guy is still beating on the husband. He goes unconscious, beats on the wife for a while. The husband wakes up again. The gun jams. She ran to get another gun. So they eventually overpowered the intruder, but it was a royal battle.
The reason they were targeted was because they had a church group over for a game night.
Yes.
That's why Paul and I were discussing it.
The attackers thought it was a drug deal or a drug house. He fought against his attacker and ended up shooting him at point blank range several times. He had a groove on the side of his head where the criminal's gun grazed his scalp.
Terrifying story. And the attacker had a semi-auto that was 40 caliber, loaded with 9. First one went off. After that, obviously, the gun didn't cycle and wasn't going to work. But it took them 2 revolvers and I believe 9 rounds or 10 rounds
to get this guy to stop. Yeah.
Who was amped up on dope?
Oh yeah.
High as a kite. Dana.
Dana.
The front door was locked. The older deceased robber tried the door, tried the knob, didn't work, banged on the door, and then rang the doorbell. The homeowner had landscapers outside and thought the landscapers were trying to tell him something. So that's why he opened the door, not paying attention to who was actually at the door.
He forgot why he bought the Ring doorbell.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, I real quick, so something triggered in my head when you guys were talking about the Florida case, about the gun jamming. We all haven't been able to go to the range for a while because we've been locked down. Clean that gun.
Yes.
You're putting it on every day. It's still getting holster and skin schmutz in it that can clog it up.
I carry a Glock.
Still can get clogged.
Schmutz.
Still can get clogs.
But
Yeah,
Tracy,
I love that
you and I
term.
the good news is I can prove I've been carrying because I've seen the lint inside my Glock, man. Talk about dust bunnies. Oh,
you know what happens the most to mine is my rear sight starts to rust because I carry appendix and I live in Texas and I sweat all the damn time.
I get it.
And I'll go and I'll pull my gun out for something. I'm like, dang, Tracy, that's embarrassing. And I'll go, Scott, can you clean my gun for me, please?
Oh, excuse me, my gun cleaning serve. For me, dear. All right, Scott, I owe you a beer.
By the
for that.
way,
Sorry.
he wasn't fighting to his gun. He was fighting to his wife's gun.
Yeah, I picked up on that. It made me wonder why the wife wasn't,
Well, okay, so now I in the report that I read on this, she fled with his two daughters to an upstairs bedroom. All right. That's right out of what we want her to do. We also wish she was armed.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go ahead and call it there. We're a little past the normal runtime of the DGU segment, and we've got to get out of here because Amanda and Rob and I have one more Guns 101 video, or four more with one person tonight yet. So we're going to go ahead and step aside to our final break. When we come back, we'll be talking about blog posts, and we'll wrap the show up right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
Hey, and welcome back to the final segment of the Polite Society podcast powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. We normally ask for emails here, and I will continue to do that on air at politicsandguns.com. But I really, really want you to come join us on Monday nights and watch our Facebook Live video, comment like Dr. Adine did today. He's got a couple, 3 comments we've gotten to. And we'll get your comments up on the screen, on air, live, and we'll talk about them. So either write us at on air at politicsandguns.com or please, please, please come join us on Facebook on Monday evenings. So that's the plug for listener feedback. Rob, man, I know you've been busy with me and Amanda, but what have you been doing over at Slowfax?
I'll try and help Amanda. I wrote an article, Ohio judges are out to lunch while fortunately kids are out of school. 2 judges recently rendered a pretty strange decision in Ohio at the appellate level. They told the 3,000 school volunteers who were trained as first responders that those trained responders can't bring their firearms to school anymore until they take several hundred hours of police officer training, essentially a minimum academy course. I don't know what problem this was supposed to solve. We already have thousands and thousands of school years of experience with volunteer armed school staff in Ohio. They're there to protect those schools from a madman. I can't explain why this judge reversed the standing interpretation of the state attorney general that said those volunteers are not police officers and do not require police officer training. That article is up at my slowfacts.wordpress.com blog. My articles are also up at Clash Daily and AmmoLand. John, I know you've been busy. I liked your article about the M1. What's new at No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money?
Well, Durham, North Carolina and their anti-gun mayor were trying to hold out and keep gun stores closed through their emergency proclamation. That is, until their lawyers told them they were going to get sued and that they were going to lose. Moreover, they would have to pay Grassroots North Carolina's attorney's fees. So they quietly changed their emergency proclamation. They just said, we're adopting whatever CISA says is essential without stating gun stores, and just kind of slunk away on a Friday afternoon without publicizing it. Fortunately, the anti-gunners like to eat their own, especially if they're not strident enough, and it was publicized in Indy Week. Now all cities in North Carolina are allowing gun stores to remain open as essential businesses. That and more is at onlygunsandmoney.com.
Before we take off, I do want to encourage everybody, go look at our Facebook listeners group. Just search Facebook for Polite Society Podcast. Listeners, we're getting new listeners every week. It usually happens, big shock, right after we're live. But we do have a lot of great discussions in there. I hang out and comment in there quite a bit. It's just a fun place for us all to hang out when we don't have to be in the general Facebook arena where anybody can get in and comment. That does wrap up another episode of the Polite Society Podcast. I'd like to thank Dr. Miguel Faria for joining us today. So for Amy, Tracy, Kat, Dana, Gary, John, Rachel, Susan, Grant, Amanda, Monty, and Rob.
Until next time.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.